Hello everyone. Today I'll be talking about the topic errors and power in biostatistics. I'm Dr. Dinesh Kumar Bagga, Professor and Head Department of Orthodontics, School of Dental Sciences, Sharda University, Greater Noida in Uttar Pradesh, India. The hypothesis testing, or you can say scientific problem solving, it involves various steps. It starts with just observing a phenomenon. And after observing a phenomenon, we formulate a hypothesis. Hypothesis is basically statement of assumption based on some reasoning with our background knowledge. So that is a starting point of investigation. Then designing and running an experiment to test that hypothesis. Then collection of data from the samples, analysis and interpretation of data using statistical tests, and finally reporting conclusions based on rejecting or not rejecting the hypothesis. Any inquiry in research leads to the search for an answer, which results in a mere speculation that what could be the solution, what could be the explanation of that observed phenomenon, but that is tentative. So it is a mere speculation about the suggested or tentative explanation or solution of the problem based on previous knowledge or theoretical background. Formulation of such propositions, that is tentative statement about the solution of the problem or relationship between two or more variables, are known as formulation of hypothesis. It is a tentative statement, it is a tentative assumption, or you can say it is a unverified, just the assumption which has to be verified later. So hypothesis is a statement of assumption. Hypo means tentative, subject to verification, and thesis means statement about the solution of the problem. Hypothesis is a statement of assumption about the solution of the problem based on some rationale which is subjected to be verified empirically by running an experiment. The research activities are performed not to find out the explanation or solution of the problem, but to verify the hypothesis which offers the tentative explanation or solution of the problem. So we have already speculated. We made a tentative explanation or tentative solution of the problem with our background knowledge, and now we have to verify by running an experiment. So hypothesis is a very important step after observing a phenomenon. It is a leap in the dark, a brilliant guess or an educated guess about the solution to the problem, a specific testable prediction about the outcome. So whatever assumption we may make, that is about the outcome, certain outcome we expect, we think so, but it has to be testable so that we can verify it. So hypothesis consists of three components basically: the population on which the results will be applied, and the variables, and finally, what are the relationship of the variables. The null and alternative hypothesis are two mutually exclusive statements about a population based on the predicted outcome. That is, existing difference or no difference. So two mutually exclusive statement or two mutually exclusive hypotheses we formulate, that shows two possibilities. Difference exists or no difference exists. So mutually exclusive means if one is true, then the other must be false. So we have to choose one over the other. Null hypothesis corresponds to a presumed default state of nature stating no difference between groups or no effect or change as a result of any exposure or intervention. For example, there is no improvement in condition of diseased person with a new treatment method. Corresponding to null hypothesis, there is an alternative hypothesis, which states the opposite situation. That means there is a difference, effect, or change between groups as a result of an exposure or intervention. Null hypothesis, NHST, is a default hypothesis. Null hypothesis significance testing also known as statistical significance testing, is a method of making statistical decisions about the population on the basis of experimental data obtained from a sample. We make the decision of the sample which is applicable to the population from where we have taken that sample, the small number of items, subjects or participants. The goal is to determine accurately if the null hypothesis can be rejected or discarded in favor of alternative hypothesis based on the available evidence. So whenever we speculate, we basically expect something. We have some uh, expected outcomes, predicted outcomes that we want to know. But the hypothesis we take, null hypothesis, which says that there is no effect, no difference. But what we think in our mind, that is alternative hypothesis, but when we want to verify, we take null hypothesis and we try to reject it so that we can prove our point in our favor, so that whatever we are expecting, we get it. So to get that, we take null hypothesis and we try to do it. So what is our goal? Our goal is just to reject the null hypothesis, but accurately. And once it is rejected, it is rejected in favor of the alternative hypothesis. And it is done based on the available evidence. So we have to check the evidence. It has to be done accurately. We don't have to disparate that due to our bias, we are getting the result. So null hypothesis should be rejected or excluded with a high level of confidence, usually 95%, thus demonstrating a statistically significant difference if null hypothesis is false. Now here I want to make a point that as we make a tentative explanation to the inquiry in the form of alternative hypothesis that we think of in our mind, we think of alternative hypothesis, we tend to go with our alternative hypothesis, which is supposedly true, as we have made it based on the previous knowledge. So we need to reject null hypothesis, which is supposedly false, but we never know that which hypothesis is false or true. So which way the hypothesis is. So if it is false, we try to reject it. So any the experiment which is conducted and data obtained from different groups, that is subjected to the statistical tests for evaluation and comparison. And we make the judgment based on the p-value. The p-value is routinely used in hypothesis testing as a measure of statistical evidence against the null hypothesis in order to determine the statistical significance of research results. The p-value will decide whether it is beyond that arbitrary cutoff of alpha level or level of significance. So the p-value is supposed to reject null hypothesis when it is actually false, as there is a difference or alternative hypothesis is true. That means null hypothesis is false and we need to reject it. So whenever it is false, we need to reject it. When it is true, we should not reject it. But it must fail to reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true. In other words, we can accept it. It is not accepted, basically we try to reject. So always we use the term whether we reject or fail to reject. So we should reject when it is false. We should not reject when it is true. So in both scenarios, if it happens, we make the correct decision. If actual condition in the population and study results obtained from the sample are same, then there is no error. It is the correct decision. If null hypothesis is false, we have rejected. If null hypothesis is true, we have not rejected. So these are two possibilities of correct decision. Now come to the other situation. If actual condition in the population and study results obtained from the sample are not matched, they are different, they are not the same, then we tend to make incorrect decision or wrong decision, and that is an error. So two possibilities of decision and errors when actually there is no difference in the population. Null hypothesis is true, but the study result in the sample shows the difference. Null hypothesis is rejected. That is type 1 error. So here, actually null hypothesis is true, but the researcher is desperate to get the predicted outcome. His background knowledge says that there is difference. And to find out that, in the end, he's happy about it. But the problem in null hypothesis is true. There is no difference, but he got the difference. When there is no difference and he got the difference, that is known as type 1 error, that is known as false positive, and that is usually due to incorporated biases that requires the study design to be corrected. Study design needs to be proper. So null hypothesis is true. It should not be rejected, but it is rejected because of the incorporated bias. So study design has to be corrected. Now the other situation is to be thought. Actually there is a difference in the population and null hypothesis is false. If null hypothesis is false, we should reject it. But the study result shows no difference and null hypothesis is not rejected. Every researcher wants to reject that, but he is not able to. He is not getting proper evidence. He is not getting that p-value, so that with the level of significance, he cannot reject it. So what could be the reason? This is type 2 error, beta error. When difference is existing and our study fails to detect that. Why? Because the statistical power is very weak. Statistical power is inadequate. And inadequate statistical power is usually due to inadequate sample size. So sample size needs to be adequate so that we should have adequate statistical power so that it can detect the difference if it exists. Whenever difference is there, whenever null hypothesis is incorrect, that means alternative hypothesis is correct, there is a difference. So it should be able to detect that difference. Now you can see this table. The actual condition is null hypothesis is true, there is no difference, and it is not rejected. That is the correct issue. In other column, you can see the null hypothesis is false. It should be rejected, and it is rejected. It's correct issue. And errors you can see when null hypothesis is true, and it should not be rejected, but it is rejected. Type 1 error. This is the serious error because it shows the desperation of the researcher because he wants significant result. So due to his biases, he might get this result. The other error is type 2 error when null hypothesis is false and he should reject it, but he is not able to reject because of inadequate evidence. And that inadequate evidence comes because of the inadequate statistical power, that is inadequate sample size, low sample size. He has to increase sample size. So if the result of test does not correspond with the actual states of nature, then an error has occurred. The two types of errors are possible due to wrong decision by incorrectly rejecting or failing to reject the null hypothesis. Both errors are never made at the same time. Only one type of error occurs at a time. A type 2 error can only occur when a type 1 error did not occur and vice versa. And before conducting the experiment, these errors need to be addressed. So there are only two possibilities. If there is a difference, you might not get the difference. If there is no difference, you might get the difference. So to understand errors, analogy from a famous story, The Boy and the Wolf. The boy cried wolf. People rushed to rescue him as they believed that there was a wolf, but there was no wolf. So this was the wrong decision. Next time the boy cried wolf, People didn't rush to rescue him as they believed that there was no wolf. But this time there was a wolf. So again, there was a wrong decision. First time they committed type 1 error. Second time they committed type 2 error. Because first time there was no wolf. There was no difference. And they got the difference. They believed that there is a wolf. So actual condition in the population is represented by wolf. If there is a wolf, that means there is a difference. If there is no wolf, there is no difference. That shows the actual condition. And what people think is the study result obtained from the sample. What people believed, whether wolf is present or not, that denotes a difference or no difference based on a study, statistically significant or statistically insignificant. So when people believed there was a wolf, this is statistically significant result. People are believing. But actual condition may be same or may be different. That you have to find out. So that is the actual condition, whether there is actually wolf or not. But people believed there was a wolf. So a statistically significant result by rejecting null hypothesis. When people believed there was no wolf, statistically insignificant result by failing to reject null hypothesis. So first time the boy cried wolf, people believed there was a wolf when there wasn't. The truth was no wolf. That was the actual condition. What people believed wolf present in their mind. And that was the study result. So it was a type 1 error or alpha error, false positive. They believed wolf is there, but it was not there. So it was false positive, as people rejected null hypothesis when it was true. They should not reject. Type 1 error is the false alarm or the false positive error, alpha error, as a result of rejecting the null hypothesis, given that it is actually true. In other words, actually there was no difference, but the study concluded a statistically significant result denoting difference. Next time the boy cried wolf, people thought there was no wolf when there was. The truth was wolf present, actual condition. What people believed, no wolf, study result. So it was a type 2 or beta error, false negative, as people failed to reject null hypothesis when it was false. They should reject it, but they could not reject it. Type 2 error is a false negative error, beta error, as a result of failing to reject the null hypothesis, given that the null hypothesis is actually false. In other words, actually there was a difference, but the study concluded statistically insignificant result denoting no difference. These two errors need to be taken into consideration during planning the experiment. Usually type 1 error or alpha error is set at 5%. Type 2 error or beta error is set at 20% or 0.2. The p-values are used to make statistical decision by rejecting or not rejecting null hypothesis using an arbitrary cutoff value known as a level of significance or alpha level. The alpha level is acceptable upper limit of type 1 error, or we can say a false positive find. And researchers routinely choose an alpha level of 0.05 for testing their hypothesis. However, there are some situations where a lower alpha level, for example 0.01, or a higher alpha level, for example 0.1, may be desirable. So it could be 1% or 10%. The smaller the value of alpha, it is less likely to reject the true null hypothesis, thereby decreasing the alpha error or type 1 error. So when we choose the stricter value or a smaller value, it becomes difficult to reject a true null hypothesis. So when it is difficult, naturally there will be less likelihood of type 1 error. At alpha level of 0.05, p equal to or less than 0.05 rejects null hypothesis when null hypothesis is false, declaring the difference between the groups as statistically significant and indicates the difference is real, not due to sampling variability. On the other hand, when p-value is greater than 0.05 or 5%, It fails to reject null hypothesis when null hypothesis is true, declaring the difference between groups as statistically insignificant, and indicates that the difference is attributable to chance due to sampling variability. So that was about the true condition, and then we discussed the reverse situation when errors take place. Now, type 2 error or beta error is failure to reject null hypothesis when it is actually false. So when there is a difference, that means null hypothesis is false, we must reject, we are not able to reject. So this is type 2 error. So in other words, it is a failure to detect the difference between groups when one exists, concluding there is no difference. So the probability of rejecting a false null hypothesis or detecting the difference when it exists by not making beta error is 1 minus beta. And that is the statistical power of the statistical significance test. When 1 minus beta or power increases, the probability of making a type 2 or beta error decreases. Beta error means there is no effect. There is no effect in the study, in the conclusion, but actually there is. So it fails to detect the difference. So we have to enhance the power to detect the difference when it exists. And the statistical power level generally accepted is 80% or 0.8 because type 2 or beta error is set at 20% or 0.2. So it is 1 minus beta, 1 minus 20%, that means 80% is statistical power. To achieve the 80% statistical power, an adequate sample size is required. Inadequate sample size leads to decreased statistical power, thereby increased type 2 error. The main purpose of power analysis is to find out the smallest sample size needed to detect the given effect size at the desired level of significance. Whatever we fix the level of significance, maybe 1%, 5%, 10%. So at that desired level of significance, with the given effect size, we need to fix that smallest sample size that with which we can detect the difference. So power analysis is conducted before the data collection. Important components of power calculations are as follows: the sample size, either investigator controlled or estimated; the effect size, it must come from the outside of the study, from previous studies, previous publications, or if it is a pioneer study, we can go for pilot study. A preliminary study can be done with a smaller sample to calculate effect size. And then type 1 error and type 2 errors have to be fixed. Type 1 error is usually 5% and type 2 error is usually 20%. So with this, we can calculate the sample size in some specific experimental designs, but not always. Given any three of these four components, that is statistical power, the sample size, the effect size, and the statistical significance level, we can determine the fourth. So statistical significance is generally set at 5% or 0.05. The desired statistical power level is between 0.8 and 0.9, but 0.8 is generally accepted, that is 80%. And the sample size can be calculated after determining the appropriate effect size obtained using previous studies or a pilot study. If the sample is if sample size is too small, the investigator might commit a type 2 error due to insufficient power. Larger samples offer greater test sensitivity than small samples. Bigger effects are easier to detect than smaller effects. So small sample size is enough. So that is why effect size is very important to be calculated before calculating the sample size. So for bigger effects, you don't need higher sample size. If it is a smaller effect, then to detect that, you need greater sample size, larger sample size. So larger the effect size, the smaller is the sample size required. Significance tests are highly dependent on sample size. When the sample size is small, the strong and important effects can be statistically insignificant due to low statistical power of the significance test. When the sample size is large, even trivial effects can have impressive p-values due to the increased probability of detecting even a minute difference as a result of high statistical power. So high statistical power magnifies a lot even the trivial effect, which is not the clinically significant or clinically meaningful. So in other words, we can say a research outcome of statistical significance maybe of a little clinical significance, whereas statistically insignificant research outcome may be of clinical significance. So that is why effect size is very important. So an increase in sample size leading to an increase in statistical power may enable the statistical significance test to label the insignificant difference as the significant difference. So that is the disadvantage of p-value. We cannot increase the sample size to much higher than required. So it has to be appropriate. So therefore, we need to know appropriate sample size for which our analysis is done. So it should not be small, but it should not be unusually large also. So power analysis is a very important concept, and it is to calculate the appropriate sample size for the given effect size with an estimated type 1 and type 2 errors. These errors need to be fixed prior to performance of the study. In an attempt to minimize error, we want to control the error, we want to minimize the error. So in an attempt to minimize error, if we choose a stringent alpha level of 0.01, say 1%, rather than 5%, so naturally rejection of null hypothesis will become difficult. So we will not be able to reject it so easily. So we are happy that when null hypothesis is true, it should not be rejected. So type 1 error we can control. So the probability of rejecting null hypothesis is reduced when it is true, thereby reducing the probability of type 1 error. Now think of the other situation when null hypothesis is false and we need to reject. So that also becomes difficult. So the probability of rejecting null hypothesis is also reduced even when it is false. So we are not able to reject it when we should. So it will increase the probability of type 2 error. So here type 1 error is minimized and type 2 error is enhanced. On the other hand, if we choose a lenient alpha level of 0.10 or 10%, then rejecting the null hypothesis becomes easier. So when null hypothesis is false, we can reject it easily. So type 2 error will be controlled. So the probability of rejecting null hypothesis is increased when it is false, thereby reducing the probability of type 2 error. But what about the other situation? But the probability of rejecting null hypothesis also increased even when it is true. When it is true. So we will increase the probability of type 1 error. So it is lenient, then even when it is true, and we should not reject it because we have chosen the lenient alpha level, we are easily rejecting it. So true null hypothesis, we are more likely to reject it and type 1 error will increase. In other words, the more we try to minimize a type 1 error, the more likelihood of a type 2 error creeping in would be, and vice versa. As there is a delicate balance between type 1 error and type 2 error, it is a judgment call for setting a somewhat arbitrary alpha level by making a choice between the lesser of two evils, that is a type 1 error or type 2 error. Is it better to say there is an effect when there isn't, that is type 1 error? Or is it better to say there is no effect when there is, that is type 2 error? You are not able to detect that difference. So which error is more acceptable than the other? Scientists have found an alpha level of 0.05 to be a good balance between these two issues. Example from general life, understanding functioning of police and judiciary on a statistical basis. In investigation regarding crime, police prefers type 1 error, whereas judiciary prefers type 2 error. Let's understand that. For police, it is better to nab the non-guilty even with insufficient evidence for interrogation, suspecting him to be guilty, that is false positive, rather than sparing the guilty with insufficient evidence, treating him to be non-guilty, that is false negative. So they prefer false positive. For judiciary, it is better to release the guilty with insufficient evidence on bail, considering him to be non-guilty, that is false negative, rather than sending the non-guilty to jail, considering him to be guilty, that is false positive. So police is preferring false positive. False positive, that is there is the he is innocent, but they treat him as guilty. And in judiciary, they prefer false negative. False negative. Even when the person is guilty, if it is not proven, they take him as non-guilty and then they give him bail. Same way, in medical investigation, there are some instances in which a larger value of alpha, that means 10% or greater than 10%, is set to reject a null hypothesis, where it is more acceptable to have a type 1. Whereas there are other instances in which a more stringent value of alpha, say 1%, is set to reject a null hypothesis, where it is more acceptable to have a type 2 error. In medical screening, type 1 error is more acceptable than type 2 error. A false positive test for a disease or type 1 error will lead to inclusion of some non-diseased individuals into a group of diseased individuals. They will be recommended further confirmatory investigations where non-diseased individuals will be identified. So initially, various healthy individuals will be taken as the diseased individuals, but confirmatory test will confirm. Suppose we accept a false negative, type 2 error, we commit type 2 error. So a type 2 error or a false negative test for a disease will lead to inclusion of some diseased individuals into a group of non-diseased individuals. We treat them as healthy individuals and we leave them. We don't take any action. So they will be not recommended further confirmatory investigations, thereby letting the diseased individuals remain untreated and putting them on risk of developing complications and maybe the consequences of death. Given the choice, we would rather accept a false positive than a false negative in this condition. So it is better to go for confirmatory test of healthy individuals and confirm that whether the person is diseased or not, rather than telling a diseased person to be healthy and putting him on risk. But in surgical treatment of organ removal in cancer, you have to be very cautious. Their type 2 error is more acceptable than type 1 error. There must be high degree of evidence, alpha level of 1%, to reject the null hypothesis, making rejection of null hypothesis difficult, thereby reducing type 1 error or false positive. More likelihood of type 2 error, categorizing some of the cancer patients needing organ removal to be as the ones not needing organ removal, will defer the organ removal in some of the patients. False positive error of recommending organ removal in cancer-free patient is not recommended, not acceptable, not tolerable. Given the choice, we would rather accept a false negative or type 2 error. That means we defer the organ removal in cancer patients than telling organ removal in cancer-free patients committing type 1 error. So we cannot remove organ in cancer-free patients. So we don't prefer false positive. We can go with false negative, no problem. We can defer the organ removal even in cancer patients. Power analysis should never be used retrospectively to calculate the observed power. Power analysis is always conducted before the data collection. Observed power is a useless statistical concept. Why I said useless? Because observed power and p-values are directly related. Reporting post hoc power is nothing more than reporting the p-value in a different way. So once we have got p-value to be insignificant. Naturally, when we calculate post-hoc power, that will also be less. So Steidl et al. In 1997 observed that estimates of true power using retrospective power calculations will never exceed 53% or 0.53. So that means once we find out about the statistical power after completing the study around 50% or maybe less, then we may reject the finding. We don't give importance to the finding. The entire study is not considered by the researcher. So the researcher who does not find a statistically significant result may conveniently reject the finding by concluding that the study was underpowered. So whatever the reason, we have to understand that finding, we have to critically analyze rather than blaming that. That leads to the interpretive bias. We should not calculate that because it is related to the p-value. So you will not get anything. Always you will find it is underpowered. So it will include the interpretive bias. So retrospective power calculation is not allowed. Power calculation is always done for the prospective study, for the next study. Conversely, if an investigation results in significant finding, one can conclude that the study was appropriately powered. There is no need to find out the power calculation. Already you have calculated power and you got the statistically significant result. So we go for all the studies which got insignificant result. We may blame them as underpowered study and we will not consider that. Example for practice, I would like to mention so that we can go through again the entire process. Null hypothesis says there is no difference between new drug and the existing drug. So now there are 4 possibilities of outcome. Null hypothesis is actually true. That means there is no difference. And the study also shows that new drug is same in effectiveness as existing drug. Both are same. So there is no error. Now null hypothesis is actually true. That means there is no difference actually. But the study shows that there is a difference. The new drug is better in effectiveness as compared to the existing drug. This is type 1 error. So what we need to do, we have to improve study design to control bias, because we have got the expected result because of the bias, because the researcher wants that result. He is desperate to get that, and this is desperate to get that result, and he is desperate to get that result, and he may be biased, and this is a serious type of error. Null hypothesis is actually false, and the study shows that new drug is better in effectiveness as compared to the existing drug. That means no error. Null hypothesis is actually false, but the study shows that new drug is same in effectiveness as existing drug. Type 2 error. That means we could not detect that difference. So increase the sample size. Conclusion: statistical power analysis is an important concept in hypothesis testing, which is performed before designing an experiment to calculate appropriate sample size based on effect size following choosing a level of significance alpha and statistical power 1 minus beta. It helps in making statistical decision and interpretation of the result. It should never be performed retrospectively in post-hoc manner to calculate power after the study is finished. Rather, it should use the data from already done study for calculating effect size, followed by calculating sample size for the next study. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving your valuable time.